Yeah, so got the message. So this is our first webinar for the, I guess, fall series. We're just thinking this would be a good chance to welcome people new to PICUP or people who want a refresher of some of the different aspects of PICUP. So I guess we're calling this a beginner's guide to PICUP. Is that the title, right, Nicholas? So we've got 5 speakers to kind of take us through different aspects of the PICUP project. And I guess we'll start with Maria.
Thank you, Anthony, and hello, everyone. My name is Maria Lopez del Puerto. I am a faculty member at the University of St. Thomas and chair of the physics department over here, and also a PICUPer for about 10 years now. And just to give you a really brief history, about 6 years ago, we applied and were awarded a large NSF grant to essentially develop workshops for faculty to be able to integrate computation into their courses. And so that's a lot of what we've been doing in the past 5 years. And a large portion of the project were in-person residential workshops. And that's mainly what I'm going to talk about. But then I'll talk a little bit too about what happened with the pandemic and what we see for the future. So I'm going to share that screen. Can everybody see that okay? Okay. So here are just a few pictures from the workshops that we ran in the past few years. They were week-long residential workshops. We had them at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, which turned out to be a great location because it was both beautiful but also secluded. So it allowed for lots of community building between the participants and included some fun side trips, like going to Ellsworth to get cheese curds. But they had the following objectives. So the first one was to help faculty develop a plan for integrating computation into their courses. So the week consisted of presentations and panels and work team time in order to help faculty think about their own courses and how they wanted to integrate computation. As this was happening, faculty then developed ownership over one or more exercise sets. So we have a collection that I'm sure somebody will talk about in a little bit, a collection of resources online that we call exercise sets. And so this can easily be downloaded and either adopted for a class or adapted to your needs for the class. And so throughout the week, people worked on how they were going to modify the exercise sets to fit their course, or if they had an idea of an exercise set they wanted to build for a particular course, they could do that as well, while getting support in how to develop it so that it satisfied the goals of the class, but also how to do some of the computation. We have experts on hand that can help out. And one of the large goals of the project was to help people feel part of the PICUP community, to join the community. And this was a great way to do it because you were there for a week and talking to other people that were trying to do similar things and that had different experiences and could share, what they had tried, what had worked for them, what ideas they had for developing materials. And so there was a lot of camaraderie built around that. And so here we can see in the pictures, this is one of the groups. I'll show you that in next slide as well. So we held this in-person workshops for 4 years, the first one in 2016 and the last in-person one in 2019. And that 2019 one was also a little bit of an experiment. We actually had the regular PICUP workshop, and then we had a part of the participants were also at the same time doing an alpha immersion. So this is the advanced laboratory immersions where participants work on an experiment that they can then bring back to their institutions. And so what we did here is the participants would attend part of the PICUP workshop and part of this alpha immersion to try to integrate experiment and computation together. And it was highly successful. It was a small pilot program, but I would say highly successful. The participants were very happy with how the experiment ran and what they were able to bring back to their institutions. And so Ernie Beringer, who some of you might know, ended up making this PICUP and Alpha love sticker that I'm showing down here after that collaboration. Then, of course, the pandemic happened and everybody went virtual. And so for the last 2 summers, we have had virtual workshops of the same flavor, meaning it's a multiple day. For the virtual workshops, there were some recordings that people watched beforehand, some homework that they did in order to prepare for the workshop, and then different activities within those days of the workshop. So again, with the goal of trying to integrate computation into the course and getting some scaffolding along how to do that. So our workshops, I don't intend to go through this entire schedule, but what I wanted to show you with this is that our workshops consist of a lot of actual work time, and we plan on keeping that going as we move forward with the project, but also presentations and panels. And I think one of my favorite parts is showcases, to getting to see what everybody is working on, the courses that they're thinking of integrating computation in, what kinds of materials they're developing. It's always a lot of fun, and always lots of opportunities for collaboration there, right? Because you might see something that strikes a chord and want to take that for your own class. So going forward, so the NSF funding is now, well, over as of tomorrow, is the official end of our grant period. And so that piece of it will no longer be there, but we're certainly hoping that we will have more funds going forward. We have another NSF submission that we haven't heard from. And the hope is that we can continue offering this pretty intense workshops that give people the time to really develop something and dive deeply into learning about something that they care about, that they want to put into their course.
Thanks, Maria. I know we had talked about potentially having like discussion at the end, but maybe with a number of participants, maybe do you want to give time for questions or just move on? What do you think, Nick? Okay, I'll leave it up. I guess, does anyone have any questions? Because I think we'll have definitely time at the end. Especially, I don't think we're going to need to get into breakout rooms. We just have a wide-ranging discussion amongst the 11 of us. So, but I guess if there aren't any questions,
maybe a show of hands, Anthony. Has anybody attended one of those? I know, right? Okay, well, we hope to see the rest of you at one of those soon.
I guess I just have a quick question, Maria. Do you have a sense of what might be different about the faculty development workshops if you do secure funding?
That's a good question, and I think there's all sorts of different developments in computation, but also questions that we get asked. And so, 2 things that we are looking at right now is this idea of big data and how to analyze big data has become, a thing. And so we want to have more exercise that's dedicated to that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more people that want to hear about things like that at workshops. And the other one is, of course, the pandemic and remote learning, right? So across the entire curriculum, what are people doing to leverage computation as a tool to help when the classes have to go online? And I think there was a lot that we learned in the past year and a half that we can then bring and use it for either purely online classes or hybrids or something that the students do at home.
Cool, thanks. So I think Brian, are you up? Do you want to talk a little bit about the webinar, maybe including the one we're in right now?
Sure, I'm here to give the webinar talk about the webinars. If you're here, you already know that we have webinars. I do have just one slide to share and then a few slides where you, the audience, can provide input. So let me send you the link to these so that you can have access to those. There we go. So yeah, so this is the webinar advertisement about the webinars. Good thing this is being recorded so that people can learn about it later. The best place to learn about the webinars is to check out the PICUP events page. So if you open that up, you'll be able to see the schedule of both upcoming events and past events, where we have the links to the recordings. Here's the one we're in right now, September 2021. We offer these webinars approximately monthly. That's always our goal. Standard pandemic excuse about whether that plan actually happens. And this series usually runs from September through about May. So we typically run this over the course of the traditional academic year. And then of course, summer ends up being a pretty heavy conference and workshop time for a lot of us. We schedule these in the evenings, and we try to rotate time to equally inconvenience both the East and the West Coast of the United States. We hear from a speaker or panel, followed by discussion as long as anyone wants. No shade to our speakers, but sometimes those discussion afterwards are even more valuable than the presentations themselves, tonight included, I'm sure. Topics really span just about anything that interests PICUP people. So computational activities or tools, teaching approaches and frameworks, and insight from education researchers, both in physics and beyond. So we sometimes hear from math folks, CS folks, engineering folks, just to kind of get that interdisciplinary perspective. Like I said, the presentations are recorded and linked on the events page, and there's no prerequisites, right? So these are not picking up where the faculty development workshop left off. We really do try to design these around newcomers and always have newcomers in mind. And we are always looking for speakers. So if you are using computation at all in your class, even just one day out of the year, you qualify, and we would love to hear from you. So you can contact myself, Nick, Anthony, anybody on the webinar planning committee. And also, we welcome your suggestions. If there's a topic you would like to have a webinar centered around, I invite you to leave leave an entry on one of the following slides. Just click on one of these text boxes and add your suggestion here. These slides are open for anybody to be able to edit, so we definitely welcome those suggestions from the community, and I'll go check those out after we wrap up tonight. I think that's all I had. If anybody else from the webinar committee has anything to add, feel free to, but I think that about covers it.
Thanks, Brian. I guess I'll add maybe more of a request from you, or I guess anyone of those committee. Does anyone want to give like a preview of some of the things that we're planning this fall?
I know Nick just messaged us about one an hour ago, so.
Yeah, I'll give the quick pitch for next month. So next month, one of the topics that was discussed at our summer capstone conference was essentially thinking about how you integrate computation on a department scale. And one of the topics that caught a lot of interest was, how do you map where computation is already being offered within your department, particularly for sort of moderate to larger size departments? There's probably a lot of computation happening, but how much of it are you aware of, and how much of it are other folks that are maybe not as computationally minded aware of? So that'll be coming up. We don't have a fixed date for it yet, but sometime in October. And again, watch the events page and the Slack channel for more information on that.
And then November, I think, Todd, you and I just nailed down a date for you to give a longer version of the talk you're about to give about the exercise set collection. So giving us an idea of what's in there and dreaming up ideas for the future. But we generally have a long running document of things we would like to do. Sometimes we have ideas of who the speakers would be. Sometimes we don't. So keep an eye on the Slack channel, because that's where we'll sometimes put in an idea about, we would like somebody to come talk about this thing. Can anybody come talk about this thing? And even if you have tangential experience with it, we would love to hear from you, even just to get the conversation started.
On that note, maybe just a kind of question for, I guess, all of us, like when we put these webinars in mind, like how are we kind of defining computation? Kind of taking this from a question that just was brought to my attention. Like, do we have like a specific like view of computation in mind, or is it pretty like, what does it mean to us?
My answer is how do we define computation? And my answer is yes. If it involves any form of using a computer to aid in the learning or research into physics, then it's computation by my book. That one of the things that we've tried to do with the webinars is to broaden out. Some of you that have been around PICUP a while know that there is a distinct and very vocal segment of the population that are Python fans. And we've specifically tried to sort of both have some webinars that are very directed at that community, and some that highlight maybe some tools that are not as widely used, at least within the PICUP community. So we try to figure out how to get as many different computational tools, computational approaches, pedagogical things related to computation into this webinar series as we can.
I'll answer that question in the negative as well. We've never turned anyone away.
And I guess I'll say there's definitely some self-interest in that question, because I think I'm one of now like 3 people from 2-year colleges who are now on the webinar committee. So it's kind of nice to see us both like welcomed onto the committee and maybe see some see some aspects that are particularly relevant to like my population and my students. And it looks like, Brian, there's already some ideas coming on your slide. So yeah.
That is wonderful. I love assessment.
I'll mention I'm not a big Python promoter. Most of my students who come through a computational physics class on my side are actually CS students already, and they're learning Java and C and Fortran, or not Fortran, sorry. I keep pushing Fortran. But Java, C, and Python. And I force them to use Excel and MATLAB so they can see other platforms. The diversity of platforms has been very valuable to me. If they were teaching a MATLAB somewhere else, or IDL or something else, I go ahead and teach Python, but that diversity is super valuable.
Thanks. So I think, as Brian mentioned, I think, Todd, you're going to give us a sort of a look into some of the exercise sets.
Yeah, and hopefully even those of you who have been longtime PICUP users, there's some new features and things we're adding that hopefully will be something for everybody. So let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. And so the exercise set really is kind of, I kind of view it as kind of like the canonical thing that makes PICUP. And it's basically a packaged activity that involves computation that you could, if you wanted to, just take and plunk it down in your class and run with it as is. No, batteries included, everything's needed. But at the same time, we want there to be enough flexibility there that if you don't like it, or it's in a language that you don't want to use, that you can still take the skeleton of that activity and transfer it over. We really do try to push this idea of language agnosticity, even though each of us has our own personal favorite. But we do want to be inclusive here. And in terms of what exactly is involved in computation, or what counts as computation, well, one of the things that we recently added is 3D printing. And so now there are a couple of activities up there that actually have the files that you can go ahead and print on your 3D printer and go ahead and do some things with it. We'd also love to see more activities that are based on pre-built simulations like PhET activities, or there's another website out there, Falstad, that has a lot of really good activities or a lot of good simulations. So we're always looking for new exercise sets. So if you are at all interested in authoring, we have our authoring guideline here. Another thing I do want to point out is we now do have a search box, and this is a whole website search tool. So take a look at that, and it can help you find things a little bit more easily. But we're not just about the exercise sets. We have other resources as well. The Faculty Commons is a good place if you have some sort of activity that you really don't want to put into the structured format of an exercise set. You just want it, something really cool that you did, you want to share out. And the Faculty Commons is a really good place to go for that. And so in some cases, we have just like a one-off activity. Other cases, it's activities for an entire course. Sometimes there's syllabi, sometimes there's grading rubrics. There's a lot more variety of things here. And so if you have something that you think is worthwhile in terms of sharing, just go ahead, submit it as a Faculty Common item. The last thing I wanted to point out is the resources tab. Michelle Kucher and I are in charge of populating this with posts about different topics related to computation. And so we're trying to get examples of how people have integrated computation in their classroom, and just to do a short write-up to say, here's what I'm doing. Because a lot of times it's very helpful to see how somebody else has done something, because then that will start to spark some ideas and as to how you could go about doing this in your classroom. So if there's something cool that you're doing that you would like to share out, something you've tried and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, or if there are topics you would like to see us going into a little bit more depth, please feel free to send Michelle Kucher and I a message on the Slack channel, and we're happy to look for those things. So those are kind of the three big resources I think that we have on the website in terms of finding things that you can run within your classroom. One other thing is that if you do go ahead and pick one of these activities, let's go ahead and here's one that I kind of like. One thing you can do is if you go ahead and you take an activity and you kind of make it your own, you can go ahead and you can create a variation of that activity. And this is something people really haven't taken advantage of yet, but we would like to see them doing. And so the idea is we really want to be flexible so you can make this your own. Did I freeze? No? Okay. I froze on my end, so I wanted to make sure I was still streaming. So yeah, take a look at this. There's new activities coming in every now and then, so it's worth taking a peek every now and then, see what sort of new activities are here. This was one that came in a couple years ago that I really kind of like, and I've been trying to find an excuse to use it in my classroom, and so I kind of like to show it off. Deva O'Neill and one of her students worked on this, and it's really kind of a nice activity. So yeah, that's what I've got for my short spiel.
Thanks, Todd. Oh, looks like Brandon, you got a question?
Yeah, Todd, can you, both for people who are thinking about using some of these exercise sets, and maybe for people who are thinking about writing their own exercise set to submit, what kinds of materials are included in these exercise sets? What kinds of materials do people need to think about preparing for submitting these?
Thank you. Yes. I kind of went through that a little quickly. So what all is included? We do require that there be some sort of learning objectives, and that those learning objectives be tied to specific exercises. And the exercises themselves are, for the most part, language agnostic. We do have specialized exercise sets, and those are ones where the language is part of the activity. For example, an activity on Intro to Jupyter Notebooks. You really could not make that agnostic from Jupyter. So those are the specialized sets. But the rest of the exercise sets each of these exercises is an activity the students can complete and is tied to these specific learning objectives. The instructor's guide will give you some tips on how to go about implementing this. And frequently, if the instructors use this in their course already, they'll give you some idea of what sort of issues they may have run into or things like that. There's a theory that will kind of let you know what your students need to know coming into that activity. And then this, I think, is really helpful for people that are first starting out. Not only do we include in templates that you can give to your students, but we have the completed code available as well. And so, for example, if you're just getting started using MATLAB or Python or whatever, the solutions are there. So you don't have to worry about trying to figure everything out on your own. We also do include the solutions as well that show what you expect to get. So I would imagine as a new instructor who's kind of feeling a little intimidated about integrating computation, having this ready resource with all of the solutions in place can be very helpful. I know for me, if I start teaching a new class, it's always nice to have that solution manual so I don't have to solve all the homework problems from scratch. And so we tried to provide that here for you as well. And so these are fairly well structured in terms of what we expect you to include, which is why we've included the faculty commons so that that is a very unstructured. So if you don't have learning objectives or things like that, or if you really can't make it language agnostic, then the faculty commons is a good place to go. That's basically the catch-all for anything that doesn't quite fit into an exercise set.
Todd, since you were sharing that, I have a follow-up question. Do the faculty commons activities have to have solutions? And
nope.
Okay, and I'm assuming like students aren't able to see like everything included in an exercise set, like including the solutions, right?
Right. So you do need to become a verified educator. If you are not a verified educator, then what you will actually see is you'll see the general description and you'll see the exercises themselves, but none of the other tabs will show you anything. So yeah, students do not get to see that material. I'm not sure about the faculty commons. Oh, yep. So you do need to be a verified educator to see those as well. But there is no requirement for what the faculty commons includes.
Just to add a quick comment, when I review exercises that come my way, I like to make sure that anything in the exercise itself is written in a way to be student facing, because it is student facing. As an example, in my numerical methods course, I like to send students to the PICUP website to go find interesting activities to do as final projects. So I like to make sure that part of the exercise is ready to go from a student's point of view, at least.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, a good way to look at it.
Adam, just I see your kind of comment in the chat. Are you asking a question about like specific recommendations about practices and assessments?
Yeah. Anything kind of specific to what we're talking about that is, I don't know, directly related to computation or coding that maybe we wouldn't come across if we're just looking at like, science education best practices.
And is that question like kind of in the context of like, would that be like maybe part of an exercise set, or is that more just kind of a larger question in terms of like where we might find these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, is anybody following somebody who I should be following, or who's doing the interesting work on that, or like how do I do this better? And I'd like to read or follow the people that are more knowledgeable than I am.
Danny Caballero, if you're looking for assessment stuff, Danny Caballero is kind of a good place to start and then go out from there. But this really is, we're still learning how to assess this effectively. So it's really early days. I don't know if other people have suggestions.
I would suggest, so for practices or pedagogy, I think some of the work that Michelle Kushera has shared with the PICUP community on pair programming and how to set up students for success, I've learned a lot from, and I use it in my courses. So I think there's also that thread that one can follow.
Thanks, everybody. I'm opening and bookmarking lots of tabs while I'm listening.
And this might be a good topic for a future webinar to kind of like maybe collect some of the resources being talked about and highlight some of them. Okay. Maybe we'll go ahead and move on. I think who's up next? Oh, Brandon, actually, yeah. Brandon, do you want to talk a little bit about the PICUP community?
Sure. So I'm Brandon Lunk. I am an instructor at Texas State University, and I've been a PICUPer for a few years now, 4 or 5, something like that. I've lost track. But I've been asked to talk about the Slack channel, which is one of the main ways that the PICUP that we use for the PICUP community to communicate and connect with each other in between the various faculty development workshops and conferences, and actually even during the faculty development workshops, we're using Slack to connect with people. But let me, let's see, share my screen. Just to show a couple of things. So first of all, how do you actually get into the Slack channel? And there are a couple of places on the PICUP website here. I was actually going to go to the community tab here, and then I saw that there's a link right here on the home page. So you can click that, and I'll show you also, if you click on the community tabs, here's the same link again. And so you can just send a message saying, I want to be on the Slack channel, please. And then you can submit your name, Brandon. There's my emails popping up everywhere. My email at email, something like that. And then Slack, someone will check you, and then you'll get an email saying you're being invited to join the Slack channel. Once you do that, you can always just Google Slack or type slack.com, and it'll take you to a page like this where you can launch it. Some people use this in their, there's an app for Slack, so you can have it on your phone or other devices. I actually just use it in my browser. I kind of like being able to get away when I need to. But here is the Slack channel. And this is actually the general thing. So let me just show everyone around a bit. So on the right-hand side, there is a list of a couple different things. There's threads here, and you can think of these as different chat rooms. So for example, here's a chat room about advanced thermodynamics. Here's one about the capstone conference that we just had. Here's one about computational physics course. Have a couple older ones here. These are actually the ones that I have basically flagged that I routinely visit. You can also go to more and go to the channel browser, and there's a whole bunch of other channels here that you can search for. So there's some of them for specific regions. So I think I saw Michigan folk. So those of you who are in Michigan maybe have your own special channel, or people who are doing upper division labs, people who are slaying Python. And you can create your own channels. So you can just click a button and say, I want to create a channel. For example, plan budget. I'm not going to. And again, it's an easy way for people to communicate. So again, just going into the general tab, you can send a message. You can also at specific people. So maybe I want to just at Marie. And everyone can see that, but she's getting a little flag that says, hey, someone just messaged you. And you can also do like separate threads. So maybe I can well, let's see, I can add a reaction. I can kind of add a separate thread here. So there's pretty decent flexibility here to just talk with people. You can also communicate directly with people. So I was using Maria as an example. So here is just Maria is in my personal conversation that now everyone can see. I don't think there's anything personal in there, but you know, so you can always direct message someone, or you can direct message a couple people. So here's the channel where Anthony was saying, hey, everyone, don't forget to go to this webinar. So I don't know if anyone has any other questions about Slack. I've kind of been ignoring the chat here while I've been talking. Oh, and these aren't about the Slack.
I have a question, Brandon.
Yeah.
Like, is it like I think my my first Slack, basically, you know, experience with Slack was through PICUP. Like, what is it mostly like faculty kind of talking, or are there students involved? Like, who kind of, like, what kind of conversations happen? And
yeah, so I believe everyone on PICUP is a registered faculty member somewhere. But you can have Slack channels for other things. So I have a separate Slack channel for the research group I have at Texas State. And so we have a couple different faculty members on that. We've got some postdocs on that. We've got undergraduate students and graduate students on that channel. So you can open up Slack to you know, whatever you want, and you can invite people onto it. So Slack's not just for PICUP. There are other groups on it. I have another Slack channel for our Texas State Learning Assistant program, and most of the people on that are undergraduate learning assistants, plus a dozen or so faculty members.
And maybe
I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. Yeah, thanks. And maybe stealing Maria's kind of question at the beginning, like, who here is actually on the Slack chat? So a good amount, but maybe not everyone.
Yep.
Oh yeah, well, maybe some people all the time, as Brian mentioned.
Yeah. By the way, here's when I just go to the Slack homepage. You know, you can see a couple of my other channels that are on here. So I had one also for my statistical mechanics course a couple of years back. So it's a handy way to communicate with people that goes beyond email or phone calls or things like that. It's a little bit less formal than email. You know, you can have running conversations in semi-real time.
I will just put in a pitch for the Slack channel that it's a great resource when you have a question because you've seen somebody do something cool and you want to know how to do it, right? It's the kind of place where you can just ask and you'll get 5 or 6 responses pretty fast. We had a great discussion a couple of months ago. Somebody was asking about learning outcomes. How do you know, what are your learning outcomes related to computation? And, you know, within about a day, we had, I don't know, half a dozen different people chime in with what they've done or what they've thought about or issues they've run into. So it's a good sort of way to crowdsource a lot of the questions that come in related to computation in your courses.
Yeah, I remember another conversation a couple of years back about upper level textbooks that had computational questions in them. And so people started posting on like, oh yeah, this book has these questions that involve computation, and this textbook has these questions that involve computation. And so if anyone remembers where that is, I was kind of looking for that recently and I couldn't find where that conversation ended up, but yeah, it's a good resource.
Actually, Brandon, that kind of brings up a question I had. Is there a way of like I see there's a search bar up there. Is the search pretty good, or is there a way of kind of like bookmarking or storing like a previous conversation for like future reference?
Yeah, you can pin conversations, so important topics can get pinned. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm still scaring. So yeah, so you could save this item. You can click on the more action, and you can pin the conversation so that it's just at the top and everyone can see it. So there are ways to do that.
Okay, cool. Does anyone else have any questions for Brandon? Okay, thanks, Brandon. And I guess last but not least, Alexis, you kind of want to give some perspective on the PICUP project?
Yeah, I'm not going to share a screen because I didn't make slides or anything because I was told I didn't have to. And I'm just trying to avoid work that I don't have to do. So I did the external evaluation for the PICUP. And that means I find out essentially what the project is quote unquote working and where they can do better, where they are doing well too, and other new areas that might be important or useful. Some people think that means my job is to take a lot of complaints, which I do end up doing that, and I write them down. If you want your name attached to it, I do take those as well. But usually I pass it on to the PIs and the leadership, suggestions on what they could do differently. If you've been participating in the community, you've probably received a survey from me at one point or another, and you may or may not have taken it. And so, yeah, I provide a lot of feedback on where the project's going. And some of the stuff I do look at too is the sustainability, which means whether or not the project might last beyond the grant funding period, because there's a lot of moving parts too beyond with that. So I just thought I'd go over some quick stuff. That's just my role. And if anybody wants to follow up, I am on the Slack space. So if people want to DM me there, or my email address is like all sorts of places too. Feel free if you want to ever talk about PICUP. So because I've recently written a summative report, and I just want to go over some quick highlights of what things are. Everything's going really well. I mean, I made that sound kind of ominous about complaints and stuff, but everything's going really well from all the feedback I receive. A lot of people really favor the community. They feel very attached to things. That kind of stuff is really nice. They've learned a lot of good stuff about teaching generally, and like not just integrating computation, but in general about, stuff like learning goals and things that they might not normally get exposed to, because that kind of stuff. Yeah, the faculty development workshop is that week-long thing that Marie mentioned that happens in Wisconsin. People love that. They're very attached to that. There's a lot of big feedback about that, about how this is like one of the most important things about PICUP. We need to sustain that. So also I'll make a bid, because this goes on YouTube. If you or somebody you love is a billionaire and you want to give money to PICUP, you should probably reach out to somebody. Yeah, so there's that stuff that's going on, that there's a lot of really good educational stuff going. I think some of the other things that people want to know about, that I've gotten questions about, for example, is do people use the exercise sets? Because I think they are pretty labor intensive. So one of the last surveys I sent out was asking about materials people are using to do integration of computation in the department. The most popular things that people cited as resources that have been useful have been the exercise sets, the PICUP faculty development workshop, and these smaller workshops that happen at AAPT or APS meetings. And over 50% of the respondents named these things as things that they found useful for integrating computation in their department. So if you've submitted a peer-reviewed exercise set, or you're doing the peer review thing, your work is being used. I'm not sure how, but it's been useful for these folks doing integration of computation in their departments. And most departments are integrating computation to some extent. It's not clear what that means, because the definition is very loose and inclusive in more than one course. So that's a really favorable thing. So there's been a lot of really good successes happening. And also there's a lot of good things happening in departments in general, with people going for the full integration computation and across all the courses. IUPUI is one of those projects that is working on that right now, I also do external evaluation for them. What else is something that's really useful for people to know? Yeah, I think there's just been a very warm and welcoming community that a lot of people have observed. And that's something I've observed as somebody who's not teaching or employed by an institution, that people are really happy with things as overall. They get the advice they need. They feel part of something. And I think that's pretty cool. And some of the challenges I just wanted to add real quick are sort of outside of PICUP's purview in some ways, but they are helping, that even challenges that might not be something they can really do. You know, you can't change people's attitudes in the department because we're not all at everybody's apartments, but, you know, having PICUP position themselves as, and bringing the importance of like an expertise in this meaningfulness around computation integration in the curriculum has helped a lot of departments realize, hey, this is something we need to do because it's important. A lot of people are putting a lot of effort. This seems like good stuff. They made a really strong case. So that's sort of the quick and dirty of everything that's going on. There's much more details. The final report was about 30 some pages, I think.
Impressive. I know you've released a lot of surveys, especially around the capstone. Was there anything like specifically like surprising to you when you kind of went through the survey responses?
I don't know if it's surprising because I've seen this in other surveys, but I think it's really nice and kind and cool that a lot of people like use these extra boxes just to thank people, the PIs, the leadership, everyone who contributes to the enterprise. I think that's a really nice community thing. Because they don't have to write thank you. They could just cuss me out or leave it blank, but there you go. So I think there's just like some really nice community things that happen that, you know, I'm not asking them about it, but people just do. And it's not like one person, it's a ton of people.
I just jumped in with my question. Does anyone else have any questions for Alexis? Or I guess I think we're at the end of our speaker list. So if can open it up for discussion. I guess I'll ask one more like follow-up question and then we'll see. So it maybe kind of to Alexis' point. So I remember at the capstone conference, there was some discussion or some questions about, you know, what this might look like in for a different population, like, you know, K-12. Like, do you see elements of the PICUP project and how it like kind of maybe translate to a middle school or high school audience?
And that's specifically for me. I know one of my friends who's teaching high school, he's looking at the exercises. I don't know what's going to pan out from that, but I know he is thinking about using them at the high school he teaches at.
I'll just chime in that I know we have had a fair number of high school physics teachers participate in various PICUP events, webinars, the summer workshops, you know, contributing to exercise sets. So I think there is some connection there. I think once you maybe once you get down beyond sort of the you know, high school level, I'm not sure how much we connect with, say, middle school, but I think the high school level, yeah, there's been some, in my experience, there's been some connections there.
Oh yeah, there are some people from high schools who attend, I think, at least the AAPT workshops that are more like a day versus a full week.
That's cool to hear, Brian, that about like translating it to the high school.
Yeah, well, because, you know, going back to the exercise sets, there is a high school tag, but it's relatively new as I understand. And so there's probably some first year exercise sets that came in before that are high school appropriate, but don't have that tag on it because it wasn't available at the time. So we're going to go back through and just say, is this one you'd be comfortable using in your classroom? Or if not, what would it take to modify it to make it more appropriate for your context? Because there's probably most of them that can be slightly modified to be fine for high school.
Just as some feedback that I just thought of, have you all interfaced with the Committee on High Schools Physics Education or whatever it's called. And I don't remember all the exact names in AAPT, because they might have people who are creating exercises already. Maybe not to the same extent like a peer-reviewed exercise, but maybe they have stuff they want to share on like the faculty commons.
Okay, well, I guess we're getting close to the end of our hour. Nick, do you want to say anything about our next webinar, or just?
I'll just put the pitch in that we are always looking for good ideas, and if you have something that you're doing that's interesting, let us know. As has been mentioned, oftentimes we put out calls on the Slack channel. If we're if we want to talk about, a specific topic, we want to talk about exercise sets or something, we'll put out a call on the Slack channel saying, is there anyone who'd like to talk about, their exercise set or whatever the topic is. So watch for that. We may do the virtual equivalent of hunt you down in the hallway and corner you until you agree to share whatever cool thing we learned about that you do, in a friendly sort of aggressive way. But yes, we like input, and I'll just add that we do have the next one coming up in October on sort of departmental level integration of computation. And then in November, talking about the exercise set process. You can see the sausage making of the editorial side of the PICUP exercise sets.
Okay, well, let's, thanks to Marie, Brandon, Todd, Brian, and Alexis for taking the time out of their Wednesday night to come talk to us about PICUP. I guess, we'll see you at our next webinar. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Well done there, Anthony.
Oh, thanks.
It's always interesting trying to MC these things.
yeah, it's a little different than class.
Yes, it is.
But no, it was fun.
Yeah, interesting that this was a much smaller than normal attendance. I'm not sure what we did there, but